Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the June Tour de Force podcast. This month we will cover the topic of sales planning, and I'm pleased to have with me founder and CEO of Tour de Force, Matt Hartman. Matt, welcome.
Hello.
Well, Matt is a longtime industry veteran in the distribution space. You've wore a lot of hats over the years, probably from counter sales all the way up to CEO. So sales planning is something that I'm sure that you've cringed at, that you've been through several times. And I think where we're going to start today is just from your experience, give me what a typical sales planning process looks like, either at one of your former companies or as we deal with customers today.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. So, I can go back 20, 25 years there's been a massive evolution of technology in the distribution space to help distributors improve the efficiency of their business and improve the way they perform a lot of different functions in a much more efficient manner than they did 25 years ago. In sales planning is an interesting area of the business because sales planning has not been an area that has evolved as the rest of the business has. So, and what I mean by that is, I can go back 25 years ago and the typical planning process is pretty consistent today as it was 20 years ago. That process is about September, October, people start thinking about the planning process. Typically a CFO is going to generate a spreadsheet for each sales rep and, that contains all their customers, whether a distributor is planning by customer, by key product line, by key vendor. So there's a lot of different variations in the way people do plan, but they typically plan in one or two of those variations. And so a typical process would be, you export a list of your customer base out to Excel, segregate that out by sales rep. Those individual spreadsheets get built, they get sent out to the distributor sales rep. And management says, hey, we're looking for a 10% growth next year. And so we expect everybody to figure out which of your accounts are going to grow, which you expect to be up, which you expect to be down. But ultimately, we're looking for a 10% growth across the business. And during that process, it's a process of salespeople just they look at it and they cringe because it's a lot of time out of their day. It takes time away from selling. It's not efficient. I was talking to a company the other day during a sales demo, and I asked them, how long is their typical preparation process for preparing for sales planning season? And they said that they typically spend about a month preparing for planning so that their CFO can get all of the spreadsheets ready, that they can take those spreadsheets and apply estimations of where they're going to end the year, so they project out a run rate for the year. And then they send those out to the sales reps, in the October time frame, and they give the sales reps about 3 to 4 weeks to get those spreadsheets sent back in. They come back into the CFO. The CFO rolls all those up to create branch level, regional level, and corporate level goals. And then hopefully by the end of the year, the organization has got all of those numbers compiled so that they can roll up all the sales reps to a branch, to a region, to the top level. It's a very manually intensive process that everybody recognizes the value in doing, running through the process, but very few people do it very efficiently.
All right, so I heard the term evolve, and I'm interested in that because one of the things that we look at inside, especially the Tour de Force system, is taking away some of that manual process. So when you think about sales planning specifically within our system, given the example you just provided, take me through a little bit of the manual process that gets taken away, or the time that's saved, or the output from a value perspective.
Yeah, great. So, what we did when we developed sales planning is a very mature area of our product. We've had it in the solution for over 10 years, and it's really evolved based on the feedback of a lot of different planning methods used by distributors. Typically, most distributors will start at a very simple process, Ken. A lot of people will say, okay, hey, year one, let's just go in and identify every sales rep, identify their top 20 accounts. And of those top 20 accounts, we want to have you plan for those top 20 accounts. just set a top line growth number. And then we'll backfill or put a raw number in for the rest of your sales territory. And that process in Tour de Force is very simple. So instead of creating a spreadsheet, we have what's called a planning setup. And every year you can define different levels of planning that you want to perform throughout the year. So basically it takes you through a wizard where you identify what planning methodology you want to use. Is it top level company? Is it regional based? Is it branch based? Is it rep based? Is it account based? Is it vendor based? Is it product group based? We have like 50 different methods of planning in Tour de Force, and you can plan on any one of those many combination. So it's a wizard that you go through, check boxes to say, okay, here's our planning methodology for 2018. You then activate planning. Once you activate planning, then that allows the sales rep to go in and access their territory. When they access their territory, they can do it over an iPad, they can do it over a phone, quite frankly, and they can go in, see their accounts, see the sales year to date, see the run rate for the year, and then if they want to simply apply a 10% growth rate across all their accounts, they can select all their accounts, apply 10%, and literally in 5 minutes, their plan is done. What then happens is it then gives you the ability, instead of having to export and send out spreadsheets and compile those, as a manager, you can look at in the planning interface, you can see how your sales team is progressing with the planning process. So it gives you a dashboard to show you which reps have planned for their territory, where you're at, total plan versus your goal for 2018. And then it makes it very easy to review a sales plan. And as a manager, you can then accept that sales plan. And it's what's called the commit process. So you review the sales rep's territory. You can kick it back and say, don't like the numbers. You need to make these tweaks. You only plan for 10%. I want 12%. But once you approve the plan as a manager, you simply click a button and say, okay, commit that plan to 2018. So each individual plan is committed on a one-off basis, or once you're done, you can take all the plans, commit the plans, and then it builds your plan from the bottom up. So now every rep rolls up to a branch. Every branch rolls to the region. Every region rolls to corporate. And so now what you're doing is building the plan at a very bottom-up level, which is going to be a much more accurate plan. So that entire process for a sales rep and for the company, literally the setup might take half hour. You'll take longer to talk about how you want to plan than you will to actually set it up in Tour de Force, and the method for the sales rep is very simple as well.
All right, I heard a lot of value from, especially probably a time savings from a planning perspective. I hear value for the rep, the old cliche, compensation drives behavior, right? If people have better visibility, they're able to produce better. And I think obviously the benefits of management goes without saying. So one of the things that I've had, the pleasure of talking to people about, especially when it comes to sales planning, is objectives versus numbers, right? And how they tackle some of that. Give us some of your experience on basically what you should be planning on.
Yeah, so within Tour de Force, and you can have the same methodology that I basically, when I was looking at the planning process, when I owned my distributor, if a sales rep told me that they were going to grow by 10%, well, as a corporation, you need to have strategic objectives. You need to have certain vendors that you want to grow. And if you want to grow a certain vendor line within the area that you sell, you need to be communicating that to your salespeople. Salespeople need to be identifying where those competitive conversion opportunities exist to gain market share or to gain business from a competitor. Those are the objectives that you set during the planning process. Most people do the numbers-based planning in an Excel spreadsheet and then have a whole different set of objectives or a written form that they fill out at the beginning of the year that identifies their objectives, and then they handwrite or they type in a Word document, here's all the tasks I need to complete to hit those objectives. Within Tour de Force, what we've done is, if for companies that are going to that next level of planning where, okay, we want to set the goal at the top level number, but now we want to identify the key objectives that each sales rep has in their territory. A key objective in tour de force terms is a sales opportunity. Because really that's what you're doing. You're managing an opportunity from discovery to close. So that's an objective in tour de force. So if I set a sales growth goal of 10%, I may want to tell my sales team, you need to identify the top 10 objectives across your territory with specific accounts that are going to drive that growth. Within those objectives, then I can look at what are the key tasks that need to be completed. So for example, if I'm doing a competitive conversion and I know that I have a customer that's buying a certain product line, during the course of the year, if I'm going to win that business, I need to be engaged with an engineering group maybe to be considered a competitive equal. So I've got to validate that my product is a competitive equal. The next phase of that may be I need to get competitive pricing from my vendor partner. So I need to work with that vendor partner to establish and gain competitive pricing levels so I can be competitive. There's a whole series of steps that need to be completed. Those, in tour de force terms, are a task. So really what the planning process is doing is building out a set of tasks that need to be completed during the year in order to accomplish a key set of objectives that will ultimately lead to the win. So now what you've done is you've created a process that allows sales managers to sit down at any point during the year and look at where are we at versus goal. And if I've got a rep that's running at 110% of goal, that's pretty good. I may not dig into the details, but if I've got a rep that's at 80% of goal, now I need to be able to dig deeper and say, okay, you're at 80% of goal, you've identified these 10 key objectives. Now let's look at where you're at on the key tasks that are driving these objectives. Because now you're getting down into the activity side of sales planning. So it really creates and helps build a plan for the sales rep throughout the year, but from a manager's perspective, you now have something that you can track against.
And that brings us kind of full circle. So that's one of my favorite things about working for the company and what I love about the product. This gets into the cliche more than just CRM.
Right.
You look at CRM products in the market, sales planning is probably not a typical function. You mentioned at the beginning it's fairly mature in our product. So with that being said, that's going to conclude the June podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Matt, thanks for joining us. We'll have you back at a future date as well. We appreciate the insight.